I'll never cock it, but I'll keep it shooting off at the mouth. I keep some loot in every room of the house. I know it's juvenile, but I think my music's beautiful. And when I grab the mic, I grip it tight to get my cuticles.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic, and today got a sweet budget beater for you that's worth its weight in gold. Here's $40 Treasure Red. So here's the deal. All right, starting early next week, I'm going to really dive into these Dominaria leaks. In case you didn't know, it was a big old Dominaria leak, and it was actually an honest mistake this time, and there's a lot to talk about, but I was going to hold off until spoiler season. But now, a bunch of other YouTubers, including some really big YouTubers, like bigger than me, have already talked about them, so it would feel like sticking my head in the sand if I didn't come out and talk about these leaks. So we're going to devote next week to that. But before we got to the leaks, I figured it was important to devote a little bit of time and bring you one more budget deck, and this is the one I've been actually having the most success with lately. I have been having a lot of fun with Treasure Red, and I feel like this got a couple of really good pieces from Rivals of Ixalan. So let me take you through it. Now, we're playing 14 different cards in this deck that create treasure in some way or another. And some of these, I feel like I'm going to have to defend more than explain. So I'll go ahead and get some practice on that front by showing you the 4 copies of Wily Goblin. I mean, this is effectively just your basic 2-mana ramp spell. Helps you get to a 4-drop on turn 3, 5-drop on turn 4, whatever. But it also gives you a chump blocker to help get to the turn in question that you're trying to get to. That's important. And I kind of like that Wily Goblin, like, subtly does something a lot of mana dorks don't do. It can block for you on the same turn that it gets you mana. You know, if you play a Servant of the Conduit on turn 2 and then on turn 3 you use it to ramp into a 4-drop, well, you've just killed any chance of Servant of the Conduit chump blocking for you. Wily Goblin's a little bit different. You know, we can get to a 4-drop on turn 3. We can get to a 5-drop on turn 4 and still have a chump blocker up. That's one very important way that Wily Goblin's different and kind of has an edge. Now, pound for pound, probably the better treasure-producing 2-drop in this format is Treasure Map. We're going to play it, but we're only going to play 3 copies. Reason being that we're probably only going to flip 1 copy in a game anyway, and it takes way longer to pay off than any of our other treasure-producing cards. So I think 3 is the correct number. But boy, do it pay off when it pays off, you know. Getting a bunch of ramp all at one time and the ability to get card advantage is so freaking sweet. And, by the way, getting scries in the meantime is great too. Fixing our draws, especially against slower decks. Like, we can get a treasure map down on turn 2 against mid-range or control especially. Then it's not quite card advantage, but being able to fix those draws for a few turns is really, really important against decks that are more reactive than proactive. We're also going to play 3 copies of Captain Landry Storm in the deck, and I really don't feel like I have to defend this at all. You know, I don't want to go all the way and play 4 copies, although I'm fairly certain that you probably could, but we're going to play it safe and run 3 copies of Captain Punch here. Well, the Captain's actually way more versatile than she might appear at first glance. There's a bunch of ways to use this card right now. She can be aggressive when you need her to be. If you played a Wily Goblin on turn 2, she can punch in for as much as 4 damage by herself. On turn 3, you know, if you're on the play, that's awesome. You punish slow starts, punish mana screw by applying a bunch of pressure all at one time really quickly. So there's that aspect of it. And also, she can effectively be a removal spell sometimes. You know, if you play her on turn 3, go ahead and swing in with her. If you can trade with an opposing creature in combat, but still get her to leave a treasure behind, that's a really good play. And if you don't trade in combat and just let her through, then she's just going to live to make more treasure next turn. And I really like the way that she interacts with Treasure Map. I see what you guys did there. Really flavorful. The legendary pirate works well with the Treasure Map. I'll see you guys. But anyway, when you flip over your treasure map, that's a huge potential boost to the Captain right there. And note the way that Captain is worded. It's a little tricky, a little bit sneaky, but that's whenever you sacrifice a treasure for any reason. It's not necessarily only when you sacrifice a treasure to get mana, you know. So if you flip over a treasure map and you tap that land, sacrifice a treasure to draw a card, that will trigger Landry Storm and she'll get a boost off of that too. Important to remember because it kind of comes up all the time. But the last piece of ramp that we're playing is probably the one I have to defend the most, honestly. I don't see why. I have been sort of obsessed with Pirate's Pillage since the first time I saw it, and we're going to play all 4 copies. I'm not like Saffron Olive Panharmonicon levels of obsessed. I'm not that locked in, but I do really like this card, and I have since the first time I laid eyes on it. You know, I kind of think of it like an explosive vegetation. Explosive vegetation gives you 2 lands, which you can use over and over for the rest of the game. This gives you 2 lands that you can only use 1 time apiece. It still gives you 2 pieces of ramp, but you only get to use them 1 time. Now, in exchange for getting to use them for the rest of the game, you get to draw some cards. Yeah, you got to discard a card. That's totally fine. I don't care. We still get the chance to draw a couple of cards and more likely draw into some stuff that we want to ramp into. So I really like this, you know. It helps prevent flooding. It gives us an outlet to discard lands if we absolutely need to. And if we need lands, it gives us an outlet to draw more of them too. So I just like a lot about Pirates Pillage. Drawing 2 cards is an awful lot, especially when you're guaranteed to go from 4 to a 6 mana play next turn. And I will fight people on Pirates Pillage. I like this card a lot. We're playing Hour of Promise in this format right now, which is the better card. All things considered, don't get me wrong, Hour of Promise is better, but you could make the argument at least that Pirates Pillage is at least a faster way to ramp than Hour of Promise. Again, though, you only get the 6 mana play one time, or the 7 mana play one time, but to that I say, this is very important, by the way, sometimes for a ramp deck, 1 6 or 7 mana play is all that deck needs to cinch things up. I mean, that's all it's looking for anyway in a course of a game, is just to get one big play earlier than it's supposed to. But, and this is equally as important, if they spend a turn or two catching up with your big dumb play that's way above tempo for that point in the game, well, that's giving you enough time to catch up and play lands number 5 and 6 and actually legitimately get to play the other big stuff that you're holding on to. So this is also, in a way, a stall tactic. Even though you only get the huge play one time, it can extend the game to where you can get to 5 or 6 lands legitimately. Now that's all the treasure-producing cards we're playing, and we've obviously got a lot of stuff that we're trying to ramp into, but there are some miscellaneous things that we're playing in this deck too that I'm going to go ahead and cover and get over with before we get to the big dumb stuff that we're trying to finish the game with. So with that in mind, let me show you the 3 copies of Magma Spray, the 4 copies of Lightning Strike, and the 2 copies of Pia Nalar. Now we got to play some removal in the deck, and even though we don't have all the slots for it, I'm going to push it all the way to 3 copies of Magma Spray. It might look like 1 too many to some eyes, but I really don't want to give aggro the chance, if we can possibly help it, of going up underneath us in the early game. You know, typically, ramp and mid-range are great decks to play against aggro decks, because anything we do in the mid-game is going to outclass just about any play they have in their entire deck. But we actually have to get to the point in the game where we can do sweet stuff like that. And if they get a really fast start, they can punish us, and we'll just never see our sweet, you know, turn 4 and 5 plays. So we've got to help make sure, as much as possible at least, and without spending too many slots doing it, we've got to make sure that aggro can't just go crazy on us in the early game. So I think 3 copies of Magma Spray is right, and I'm going to supplement that with 4 copies of Lightning Strike. Now the Pia Nalar, though, is to sort of shore some things up. We're kind of thin at the 3-drop slot, and this is probably the best red 3-drop right now. Produces 2 bodies, one of them flies. That's pretty sweet. This is just a good, versatile card. Gives us some mana sink, and it also works pretty well with artifacts. You know, in the late game, if we don't need the mana from treasures anymore, but we've got a couple of stray treasures laying around, we can sack those and make our creatures, you know, more able to get through. So that can be really important too. But we've made it to the big stuff here, or at least the semi-big stuff, because I'm going to start this off with a 4-drop. We're going to play 3 copies of Skyship Stalker in the deck. Kind of surprising to see, but this is what I'm playing instead of Chandra. If you have Chandra, play Chandra. But there's actually cool reasons to play this. This actually isn't so terrible to play on turn 3. You know, 4-drop on turn 3 is usually alright, and when we get a 3/3 flyer on turn 3, that's a pretty sweet deal, especially one that's like a Swiss Army knife. You know, it's no Morphling, it's no Aetherling or whatever, but it's still not a bad card. We can give it first strike, we can pump it up, there's cool stuff that we can do with this, and it's kind of relevant sometimes, you know. This can't be hit by a Glorybringer, kind of a corner play, but one that comes up kind of a lot. Glorybringer is a card that sees a lot of play, and Glorybringer can't kill this. That's important. And this can kill a Glorybringer if you have the mana to pump it up and give it first strike. Same thing with Aethersphere Harvester. Pump this up, give it first strike, bing bang, no more Aethersphere Harvesters to have to worry about. And you can just fly over with this for the rest of the game or until they kill it. So I actually like this. Kind of like this guy more than I ever thought I would. He was just sort of a base substitute for Chandra at first, but the more and more I play this deck, the more I like seeing this guy, even dry. You know, you play him on turn 4 sometimes, he's fine. But we're actually not done with dragons. Remember, I was just talking about Glorybringer? We're going to play Glorybringer, right? We're going to play all 4 copies of Glorybringer here because it's still a pretty budget card. I've talked about this in the recent past, but I don't understand how a card that has all the business being a $10 card. Like, this could be a $10 card. I don't think anybody would blink at that. It's still just like $325, $350 on TCG Player. That's a pretty affordable price tag for what is legit one of the best cards in the whole format. Even if we weren't ramping, we'd probably play this, but the ability to get a turn 4 Glorybringer is pretty hot. Like, in a way, just playing a playset of Glorybringer makes your deck way better. Like, you can play 4 Glorybringer, a bunch of mountains, and a bunch of garbage, and you at least have a chance because you have 4 Glorybringers. This is a really good card right now. Haste is crazy, 4/4 Flyer is crazy, Kills Dudes is crazy. It's just like a purely powerful card that's obviously powerful, even to people who've been playing for 1 day. So we're going to play all 4 copies of this. I just don't see a reason not to. Now, the rest of the deck is all like big 6-drop stuff that we're trying to ramp into, so I'm going to show you all these on a slide real quick. We're going to play 2 copies of Ixalan Primal Storm, 2 copies of Sunbird's Invocation, and 1 copy of Burning Sun's Avatar. Now, if I'm being honest, the 1 copy of BSA is because I really like this card. Unashamedly wanted to play the 1 copy because I like it every time I play it. This will usually kill a creature, and it's a big dumb 6/6 thing that your opponent has to deal with, and it cracks them in the face for 3. Why isn't this card more popular? The Enter the Battlefield trigger is crazy on it, and it leaves you with a 6/6, and honestly, I know it's 3 red, but it costs 6 mana. It's not that hard to get to 3 red by the time you have 6 mana, and in all honesty, it's not that hard to get to 6 mana in this format either. So I think BSA is way better than people give it credit for. I get a lot of success, I get a lot of work out of this card. Every turn does come around, things start getting really crazy. It's very easy to get 2 free cards every turn off of this until they get rid of it. Italia is a force. This card is serious. I don't think that it's going to like break through into mainstream competitive play anytime soon. Because again, it's a do-nothing 6-drop creature. You have to wait a whole turn for it to do anything at all. But in a deck where you're ramping it into play as early as turn 4, this thing forces an answer, or it's just going to get you crazy card advantage and deny your opponent some cards they'd probably really rather draw. Now, we're playing 25 lands in this deck. Again, that may seem like maybe a land too much, because we're playing all of this ramp here, but I still want to make our drops. I still want to make sure that we can get to, you know, these big 6-drop creatures, 5-drop Glorybringers and stuff. Even if we only get like 1 treasure producer all game. I want to make our drops to make sure that we can still get to these, you know, huge converted mana cost spells. Because, let's face it, we're playing a pretty high curve. We don't want that stuff to get stuck in our hand. Let's play a bunch of lands to hit those drops. But just in case we hit too many land drops, that can happen, obviously. We've got Desert of the Fervent in there to help mitigate flooding. Just in games that go long, I like having the option of Arch of Orazca. You can gussy up this mana base if you want with Field of Ruins, Scavenger Grounds, whatever. But those are all well over $1. And Field of Ruins is like $4 or $4.50 last I checked. Arch of Orazca is still a really effective colorless land that does something awesome, but only costs like 55 cents. That's a heck of a deal. Now, as far as the sideboard goes, we are doing a lot against that aggro matchup. We've got Magma Spray. We've got Chandra's Defeat against the mono-red aggro decks. A Braid will come in sometimes against small creatures decks, but also, obviously, against Godfair's Gifts decks. So we'll use a Braid a lot. We get a lot of work out of that card. But we've also got weird stuff in here like Gleaming Barrier, Chaos Maw, and Form of the Dinosaur. Most of these, again, are against aggro. Form of the Dinosaur can be good against mid-range, and especially smallish aggro decks, where just about every turn you can take out one of their, you know, small dudes. Even if they top deck, you know, a small guy every other turn, then you can still just clean those up with the Form of the Dinosaur and still not really worry about dying. I like this. It resets your life total later on in the game when you need it to, and it kills a creature every single turn. I've actually seen a couple of decks, not even strictly treasure decks, but some other decks in this format that went 5-0 in competitive league on MTGO that run multiple copies of Form of the Dinosaur in the main deck. So I don't feel bad about running the 1 copy in the sideboard. The card's actually not terrible sometimes. And then Gleaming Barrier, obviously a barrier against aggro decks, and when they do manage to kill it, usually when it blocks their Hazoret, we get a free treasure out of it. And Chaos Maw. the only 7 mana play in the entire deck. But this can be really important to bring in again against aggro decks. We've got some cards, some creatures of our own that this can kill, but I'm honestly not too worried about it. Against aggro, if we can kill the majority of their board sans Hazoret and put out a huge creature that can block Hazoret for the rest of the game, or just kill them in like 3 turns, yeah, I'm fine with that too. I'm fine with all of that. And here are those power rankings right here. A final score of 59, not too shabby. For a pretty budget deck, this thing's light on the wallet, only about $40, and it's very likely that you've already got a lot of these pieces. So it shouldn't cost you too much to build, and it's a lot of fun. It's a working ramp deck. And the difference between this and a ramp deck with like Hour of Promise or something, or traditional ramp decks at all, really, is that, again, you're working towards one big ramp play in a game, and you better make it the right play. So it is a little bit different than most ramp decks, but like I said, by the time they're done dealing with your giant turn 4 or 5 play, you've legitimately got the lands now to play the other big stuff in your hand. So it still functions like a ramp deck usually does. I've really had a lot of fun with this. I sincerely hope you try it out. And if you are interested in doing that on the super hella cheap, just click the first link in the description. That'll take you over to TCG Player, my sponsors to Cog Player. They're good folks, and they're where you can get this deck for the absolute cheapest price online. So click the first link in the description. That'll take you over to the deck list on their website. But I'm pretty sure I'm tapped out for now. Make sure that you sub and hit the bell for the notifications if you haven't done that yet, because next time you see me, and all next week, I'll be talking about Dominaria leaks. That's kind of important. So sub, hit the bell for the notes. Like the video if you like the video. The most low effort way of supporting the channel. Follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev, or you can kick me $1 a month on Patreon, and I'll let you know what decks we're doing the day before they come out. So that's not a bad deal, man. I used to spend $1.69 a day on Mountain Dew. I'd buy 1 Mountain Dew every day, and that's kind of part of the reason I look like this, but it's $1.69 every single day, 30 days a month, 365 days a year. So $1 a month, not too bad. So throw me $1 on Patreon if you possibly can. I'll let you know what decks we're doing the day before we do them. But in any case, that's all I got for this one. I'll catch you cats later. Thanks for watching, my wizards. I'm Dev from The Place. Spread love and be kind.